I'm in San Antonio for NAREIT's REITwise, our 2019 Law, Accounting, and Finance Conference. Joining me today is Scott Page, Professor of Complex Systems at the University of Michigan and noted author. Scott, thanks so much for joining us.
That's great to be here.
Now, I'd like to start by asking you a little bit about diversity. How does diversity drive performance?
Well, it's interesting that you raise that, because when we think about diversity typically, especially in an investment context, we think of it as risk aversion, right? So we invest in a diverse portfolio of stocks so that one stock goes up, the other one goes down. When you think about things like solving problems, finding creative solutions to problems, making accurate forecasts, diversity actually creates a bonus, so it makes groups better at what they do.
And what do you mean when you talk about, in some of your work, cognitive diversity?
Right, so when you think about, like, let's say making a forecast about what's going to happen to real estate prices in Seattle or Chicago, cognitive diversity means different information sets, different models, throwing different variables in, so it's really thinking about the world in different ways. Oftentimes when people say diversity, they mean identity diversity, differences in sort of race, gender, sexual orientation, that sort of thing. Now those are going to correlate with kind of how we think. But when you think about business performance, bottom line business performance, it's really differences in how we see the world, how we think about the world, that translate into these bonuses.
And what actions can REITs take to leverage diversity?
So one of the things, when you think about any organization or any industry that's dealing with what we'd call a complex problem, so by complex we mean difficult to explain, engineer, predict, or something that's somewhere between ordered and completely random, where it's hard to figure out. What you want to do is you want people who are trained in different ways, people who have different life experiences, people who sort of understand different industries. I think so often, especially if you're successful, you tend to think, this person looks like me, studied where I studied, has the same experience as me, I'm smart, she's smart, I'll hire her, right? And the thing is, the world is so high dimensional, so complex, there's so much going on, that if you sort of funnel your applicants into people who look like you and think like you, you're going to end up with teams that aren't as successful. So what you want, good teams depend on diverse talent. And there's a lot of evidence that backs that up, but it sort of runs counter to how I think a lot of people think about the world, which is a little bit like, I'm good, I'm going to find people exactly like me. That's not true once you're in a team setting. You really want diversity.
And lastly, and this may be hard for you to sort of quantify, if you look at whether it's REITs or corporate America in general, how far along do you think companies are to sort of recognizing this and embracing this idea of sort of this broader concept of diversity?
So I think that almost every organization that's run up against, I think, really difficult problems, especially true in industries like, biomedical research, or, if you go to Silicon Valley or you go to Wall Street, where people are saying, we need that competitive edge. And you're not going to find people who are smarter, right? So what you need is you sort of need people who maybe are trained in a slightly different way, maybe have different sets of experiences, just kind of parse the world differently than you do. Because each one of us has sort of limited bandwidth, right? And yet the problems we face have even higher bandwidth. So, one last thing that we see in this, so fascinating, is that the rise of AI and the rise of all this big data, that almost becomes like another person in the room. But we're very aware that that person is different from us. So it uses data differently, it thinks about things differently, and that the human advantage in some sense comes from us not being smarter than AI, but being different than AI. And the same is true with groups of people. You want people who are smart, but you want people who are different. So the organizations that I see best at this are, I think biomedical research is way ahead of the curve on this. They hire from different schools, they go at problems in different ways. I think you see it also in the intelligence community a lot. I think they've invested a lot of money and resources and time thinking about how do we see around that bend in the curve, and the way they do that is by people who take different angles.
Great. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Great. For more information on this and other REIT news and analysis, be sure to visit NAREIT's website, REIT.com.